Hello, wonderful littles. I hope all is well. I hope that you have been enjoying reading with your mommy and your daddy. And I wanted to share a few more stories today. I do apologize that I have not uploaded here recently, but hopefully this makes up for it. And I want you all to know that even though I haven't uploaded, it doesn't mean that I have not been thinking about you, sending well wishes your way, and sending up prayers for you and your families, okay? And so the story that I'm going to read is an excerpt or a couple of excerpts from Kids' Favorite Bible Stories created by Stephen Elkins. Okay, and the publishing company is Wonder Kids Share Wonder, distributed by Midwood Brands LLC in Matthews, North Carolina. Okay, and I'll have the information in the description box in case your parents would like to purchase it for you. Okay. Noah sends a dove. The earth was flooded for 150 days, but God cared for Noah and his family. He sent a warm heavenly breeze to dry the earth. Soon the ark came to rest in the mountains of Ararat. Noah waited 40 days before he opened the window. He sent out a raven, but there was no dry place for the bird to land. Then he sent out a dove, but the dove could not find no dry place and returned to the ark. Noah waited 7 more days before sending the dove out again. This time the dove returned with an olive leaf in its beak, a sign that there was dry land. Noah waited 7 more days and again sent the dove out. But this time the dove did not return. The dove did not return. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark with your wives and your sons and their wives and all of the animals." Noah was thankful God had saved his family, so he built an altar to please the Lord. "Thank you, Lord, for saving my family. You are a wonderful God." God made a promise never again to destroy the world with floodwaters. As a sign of his promise, he set a beautiful rainbow in the sky. God made a promise. This is Genesis 11, and that was from Genesis, the 6th chapter to the 9th chapter. And now we're in Genesis 11. The Tower of Babel. After the great flood, Noah's children began to raise families. Their children had more children until the earth was one big family with one language. These families began to move eastward until they came to a place called Shinar. There the ground was just right for making bricks, and there was plenty of asphalt for mortar. They said, "Let's build a great city with a tower reaching to heaven." So with bricks and tar, the people of Shinar began building a tower to reach the very gates of heaven. When God came down and saw the tower, he was displeased. These people believe they can build a tower that goes to heaven without calling on my name. Come, let us mix up their language so the people cannot speak to one another. Immediately, their language was confused, and because they could no longer understand one another, the work stopped. The Lord scattered them all over the earth. That is why to this day we call the Tower of Babel, for it was there the language was confused. Genesis 12. Abraham believed God. God made 3 very important promises to Abraham. 1. God promised Abraham his own country. 2. God promised Abraham children, even though he was very old. And 3. God promised Abraham that the Messiah would come from his family. Even though these were big promises, Abraham believed God would do what he said. That is why he is called the father of all who believe. And yes, God kept his promises. Abraham's country was called Canaan. His son was named Isaac, and the Messiah was called Jesus. God made 3 promises. Genesis 18. Sarah was Abraham's wife. All her life she wanted a child. Then when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord said, "I will make you this promise. You and Sarah will have a son." Sarah heard what the Lord said, and she laughed. After all, they were too old to have children. When the Lord heard her laughter, he said, "Is there anything too hard for the Lord?" At age 90, Sarah had a son. They named him Isaac, which in Hebrew means he laughs. Is anything too hard for God? Excuse me, my littles. You all hear my little puppy Zoe? She's sitting right by me. She's probably going to jump up in just a minute. But that was her collar with her bell on it. Genesis 25. Isaac loved the Lord and grew to be a great man of God. At age 40, he married a woman named Rebekah. Like Abraham and Sarah, they prayed that God would bless them with a child. When Isaac was 60 years old, the Lord answered their prayers with a double blessing. Rebekah was going to have twins. Even before the babies were born, Rebekah felt them kicking and fighting each other. "Why is this happening?" she asked the Lord. Isaac loved the Lord. The Lord answered and said, "Two nations are inside of you, and the two will be separated. One will be stronger than the other. The older brother will serve the younger." On the day of their birth, Esau, the firstborn, was red and hairy. Jacob was fair and smooth, and followed with his hand, grasping Esau's heel. Just as Rebekah had been told, the two boys were different. The two boys were different. Esau grew up to be a very skillful hunter, while Jacob liked to stay close to home. One day Esau came home weary and tired from a long day's hunt. Jacob had just finished cooking some tasty stew. Esau was very hungry when he said, "Jacob, let me have some of your stew." Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." This meant that Jacob, the second-born, would have all the special honors given to the firstborn. Again Jacob said, "Give me your birthright, and I will give you food." Esau, being so tired and with the smell of Jacob's stew tempting him, replied, "I'm about to die anyway. What good is a birthright if you're dead of hunger? You can have it. Now give me some stew." "Swear to me first," Jacob demanded. So Esau swore before the Lord and gave Jacob his birthright. How foolish he was to sell his birthright for so little. Many years passed, and their father Isaac became very old and blind. Fearing he may die soon, he called for Esau and said, "Take your bow and arrow to the country and bring back some wild game. Prepare a meal just the way I like it and bring it to me. Then I will give you my blessing." When Rebekah heard what Isaac had said to Esau, she called for Jacob. She told Jacob she had a plan to trick Isaac so that he would be the one to take the food to Isaac and receive the blessing. Jacob was concerned Isaac would know. He said to his mother, "Esau is hairy, and I am not. What if father touches me and finds out I am not Esau? What if he curses me instead of blesses me?" "The curse will be upon me," Rebekah said. "Now do as I tell you." Then Jacob dressed in Esau's clothes, and with his hands covered with goatskins, took the meal into his father's room. Jacob said, "The Lord has given me a successful hunt. Rise and eat and give me your blessing." Isaac said, "Come close so I may touch you, to know if you are really Esau." When Isaac touched the hairy goatskin hands and smelled Esau's clothes, he blessed him, saying, "May all people bless and serve you. May nations bow down to you." Now Jacob had taken Esau's birthright and blessing. Just as Jacob left, in came Esau with the tasty meal he has prepared for his father. "Rise and eat, and give me your blessing," Esau said. "Who are you?" Isaac asked. "I'm your firstborn son, Esau," he answered. Isaac trembled. "Who was it then that brought me food and received my blessing? For he will be blessed indeed." When Esau heard his father's words, he cried, "Bless me too, father, bless me too." Isaac raised his head and said, Your brother has deceived me. He has taken your blessing, and I have made him lord over you and all his relatives. I can give you nothing." Esau hated Jacob and said to all, "The day is coming when I will kill Jacob." Genesis 28. One evening on the way to Haran, Jacob stopped to rest for one night. He spread his blanket across the ground and used a large stone for a pillow. He fell asleep and dreamed. He saw a stairway to heaven. The bottom of the stairway rested on the earth. The top reached to heaven, and the angels of God were climbing up and down the heavenly stairway. There above the stairway stood Yahweh, our Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your grandfather, and the God of Isaac, your father. I make this promise to you. I will give to you your children this land where you are now sleeping. All the people on earth will be blessed because of you and your family. I will watch over you, and no matter where you go, I will be with you. Jacob woke up frightened. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place, and I didn't know it, he said. So early the next morning, Jacob arose and took his stone pillow and poured oil over it and set it as a reminder to the whole world that God had been there. Then Jacob made a promise to God. If God will watch over me on this journey, and I return safely to my father's house, then Yahweh, the Lord, will be my God, and I will give him a tenth of all I may own. Genesis 37. Some years later, Jacob married and had 12 sons. He settled in a place called Canaan land, where his sons tended flocks of sheep. Now Jacob had a favorite son named Joseph, who was born when Jacob was very old. To show his great love, Jacob made Joseph a coat of many colors. Many times Joseph would come to his father and tell him the bad things his brothers were doing. This made his brothers very angry and jealous. Joseph's brothers hated him for this and could not speak a kind word to him. One night the Lord sent Joseph a very special dream. The next morning Joseph told his brothers all about it. He said, We were in the fields tying bundles of grain together, when suddenly my bundle rose up and stood tall, while your bundles gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Do you think you will someday rule over us? His brothers said, and they hated him even more. Then Joseph had a second dream. He said to his brothers, This time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told the dream to his father, Jacob was very unhappy. Do you believe that your mother and I and your 11 brothers will bow down before you? One day Jacob said to Joseph, Your brothers are tending to our flocks near Shechem. Go to them and make sure all is well. Joseph obeyed his father and soon found his brothers on a hillside. But his brothers had seen Joseph's coat of many colors from a distance, and before Joseph reached them, they plotted to kill him. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Let's kill him and throw him into one of these empty water holes and say a wild animal attacked and killed him. That will put an end to his dreams. When the oldest brother Reuben heard their plan, he stopped it. Do not kill him. Throw him into the pit, but do not harm him. When Joseph saw his brothers, he ran to them. Suddenly they all jumped on him and began tearing the coat of many colors from his back. They tied him up and threw him into an empty water hole. As they sat to eat, a caravan bound for Egypt passed by. Judah said, Why don't we sell Joseph to these merchants? Then we'll be rid of him forever. Joseph was sold as a slave to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. When Reuben found out what they had done, he said, How can we face our father having done this? They decided to kill a young goat and dip Joseph's coat in the blood. They took the coat to their father. Father, we found this coat on our journey back home. Is it Joseph's? Sometime later, the king's baker, Jacob knew it was Joseph's coat and cried out, It is Joseph's coat. Some wild animal has killed my son. He must have been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes and wept bitterly. No one was able to comfort him. Meanwhile, Joseph was on his way to Egypt. Genesis 39 through 41, or the 39th chapter through the 41st chapter. When the merchant caravan reached Egypt, Joseph was sold to an Egyptian named Potiphar, who worked for the king as a captain of the guard. Being an honorable man, Joseph soon became Potiphar's most trusted servant. Joseph even lived in Potiphar's house and was put in charge of all he owned. Potiphar's wife became angry with Joseph because he would not disobey the law of the Lord. She said things about Joseph that were not true. Because of her lies, Potiphar had Joseph put in prison. Some time later, the king's baker and servant were also put into the same prison. Joseph took care of them. While they were there, each one had a dream which troubled them greatly. Joseph noticed their sad faces and said, "Why are you so sad?" "Last night we both had strange dreams, and we don't know what they mean," they said. "God knows everything," answered Joseph. "With his help, perhaps I can explain the dreams to you." The king's servant spoke first. "I saw a vine with 3 branches, which budded and blossomed into ripe grapes. The king's cup was in my hand, so I squeezed the grapes into the cup and put the cup into the king's hand." Joseph explained, "The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days the king will call for you, and you will once again be his chief servant. When this happens, please mention me to the king and get me out of this prison, for I have done nothing wrong." The chief baker spoke up. "In my dream, on my head were 3 wicker baskets. The top basket was full of bread for the king, but the birds were pecking the bread to pieces." Joseph said, "The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days the king will have your head cut off and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh." Everything happened the way Joseph said it would. The servant was freed, but the baker was killed. 2 years passed, and the king had a troubling dream. He called for the wisest of Egypt to explain it, but they could not. Then the king's servant remembered Joseph, and how Joseph had explained his dream while he was in prison. He spoke to the king. "There was a Hebrew slave named Joseph I met in prison, who once explained the meaning of dreams to me. All that he said came to pass. Perhaps he will know the meaning of your dream." The king sent for Joseph and said to him, "I am told that you can explain the meaning of my dreams. Is this true?" Joseph answered, "I cannot, but my God can. He will give you the meaning of your dreams." The king told Joseph his dream. "I was standing by the Nile River when I saw 7 fat cows come out of the water. Then 7 skinny cows came out of the water. Then the skinny cows ate up the fat cows, but no one could tell they had eaten. Then I woke up. Later I had a second dream where I saw 7 ripe and healthy heads of grain growing on a single stalk. There sprang up 7 more heads of grain, but these were withered and thin. Then the 7 thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy heads. Is your God able to tell me what the meaning of these dreams is?" Joseph answered, "God has indeed made known to you what he is about to do. The dreams are one and the same. The 7 fat cows and the 7 healthy heads of grain are 7 years. The 7 skinny cows and the 7 withered heads of grain are also 7 years. God has shown you that there will be 7 years of plentiful food, followed by 7 years of famine and starvation. You should put a wise man in charge of saving up a part of the harvest in the good years to be eaten in the bad years." The king thought Joseph's idea was very good, so he made Joseph second in command over Egypt to carry out the task of storing food for the coming famine. Genesis 50. Just as Pharaoh's dream had foretold, there were 7 years of plenty. Joseph gathered a portion of the grain and stored it in the cities. Then came the 7 years of famine. The people cried out to Pharaoh for food. Joseph then opened the storehouses of grain, and there was plenty of food. In Canaan, where Joseph's father and brothers lived, there was very little food. Jacob told his sons, "I have heard there is plenty of food in Egypt. Go there to buy grain." And so 10 of Jacob's sons left for Egypt. Benjamin, the youngest son, stayed with his father. When the 10 brothers arrived in Egypt, they were presented to Joseph. They bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Joseph knew they were his brothers, but he pretended not to know them. He spoke harshly. "Where do you come from?" "From Canaan," they replied. "We've come to buy grain." Then Joseph remembered the dreams he had about them. "You are spies," Joseph said. "No, my lord. We are the 12 sons of Jacob. The youngest is with him now, and we do not know where our other brother is." "You are spies," Joseph repeated, "and you will be tested." Then he put them in prison. 3 days later, Joseph said, "One of you must stay here in this prison. The rest of you will return to your father's house. Take this food to your starving family, but you must bring your younger brother back to me. Then I will know you are telling the truth, and you will not die. Now go." Then Joseph had his brother Simeon bound before their eyes. Secretly, Joseph ordered his servants to fill their bags with grain and to put money they had used for payment back in their bags. After this was done, the 9 brothers started home. Evening came, and Joseph's brothers stopped to rest for the night. As they opened their grain sacks to feed the donkeys, they were frightened to find their own money. "What is God doing to us?" they asked, and they were afraid. Soon they arrived in Canaan, and they told their father the things that had happened. "We must return to Egypt with Benjamin," they said. "No," Jacob shouted. "Joseph and Simeon are gone, and I will not allow Benjamin to go." But when Jacob and his family had eaten all the grain, he knew that Benjamin would have to go to return with his brothers to Egypt to buy more grain if they were to survive. They prayed that God would be with them. This time they hurried down to Egypt, taking with them special gifts for Governor Joseph. When Joseph saw them coming with his brother Benjamin, he said, "Servants, prepare a meal for these men." Then he left. Joseph's brothers were afraid. They thought they might be put in prison for stealing, so they tried to return the money they had found in their bags to Joseph's servant. But the servant said, "Do not be afraid. The money you found was a gift from God." Joseph had Simeon brought to them, and when he returned, they gave him the gifts they had brought. Again they bowed down before Joseph. As Joseph spoke to Benjamin, his heart was deeply moved with love, but Joseph still did not tell them who he was. When the meal ended, Joseph ordered his servants to fill their grain bags to overflowing, and again put each man's silver in their bags. Then he said, "Be sure to put my silver cup in Benjamin's sack." His servants obeyed. When morning came, his brothers left for Canaan with the bags of grain. Shortly thereafter, Joseph sent his servant after them, and he said, "My master was good to you. Why have you repaid him with evil and stolen his silver cup?" "We have stolen nothing," the brothers answered. "Search our bags. If you find the silver cup, the owner of that bag will die and will become your master's slaves." So they each lowered their bags to the ground and opened them. The servant pretended to search each bag and found the silver cup in Benjamin's bag, right where he had put it. The brothers were surprised and could not believe it. They loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. They went into Joseph's house and bowed down before him, terrified they would be put to death. Judah spoke, "God is punishing us for a terrible thing we did long ago. Now we are your slaves, and Benjamin is at your mercy." But Joseph said, "I cannot do such a thing to you. Only the one who has stolen my cup will stay here. The rest of you go back to your father in peace." Judah walked closer to Joseph and said, "My lord, if Benjamin remains here, I am certain our father will die of a broken heart. He especially loves Benjamin as he did our other brother. Please take me in his place and let Benjamin return to our father." When Joseph heard this, he could no longer hold back the tears. "I am Joseph," he shouted. "I am Joseph, the brother you sold into slavery." His brothers were frightened and could not believe it was him. Then Joseph said, "Come close to me, and do not be angry with yourselves. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to save you and your children from the famine. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Joseph then sent for his father Jacob. When Jacob arrived in Egypt, Joseph embraced him. Jacob said, "Now I can die in peace, for I have seen my son." Jacob and all his family moved to Egypt, where they lived for many years. Okay, you guys, so the next time I read, we'll pick up with the book of Exodus, okay? You all remember to tell your mommy and daddy, or your auntie or uncle, or godmom or goddad, or grandma or grandpa, big sister, big brother, big cousin. Remember to tell them to read with you every day, okay? And Miss Vann will see you all again soon. Take care.